And hey now everyone, it's that time of week to break down the latest episode of the Ahsoka series. So if you haven't seen it yet, here is your spoiler warning. The buffer is in place. But now, it is time to get into the review. So what can I say? I mean, Ahsoka Episode 7, Dreams and Madness, just continues the great storytelling that this series has given us so far. I mean, I wouldn't say it was the best episode, but it definitely didn't disappoint. It just, like I said, great storytelling. It still has that fresh Star Wars correct feel, if you know what I'm talking about. I really appreciate some of the cool lore nuggets we got in this episode, especially via Anakin's hollow ghost. I know, it's not a ghost, just a hollow recording. But it's cool, learning that was his last lesson that he sent to Ahsoka and that he created 20 total. And she has a little wood box with all them saved in there. And you could just feel in that scene how different Ahsoka is after having her little lesson with her former master. It seems she's much more open to the idea of learning from him again, and it just puts her in a great place. I mean, it was just, Ahsoka in general in this episode just felt completely revitalized, and it all makes sense. We don't need to relitigate why, but gone is the stoicism and being upset, sad, concerned, depressed, if you will, about her legacy and ties to Anakin, and now you just have this full of piss and vinegar Jedi lady kicking butt, taking names, laughing, smiling, loose as a goose. So I really appreciate, this new form of Ahsoka we are getting. It's much more akin to who she was before Anakin's fall to the dark side broke her. So great stuff there. I also, I know my buddy Young Nick hates how Thrawn was portrayed in Episode 6, but I felt like Episode 7 leaned even harder into Thrawn's style of tactics. And hopefully everyone's seeing that, yeah, he is expecting to lose to win. I mean, he lays down his game plan throughout this episode. Number one objective has always been to get off the planet. It's never been about finding Ezra. Let him play around with the turtle people. Who cares? As long as he's busy and not messing with us, we can get out of here. And then he also explains why he sent Sabine away, and that was to make sure Ahsoka didn't come to them at that temple. And in the end, he reveals that, listen, it's okay. The good guys, it may look like they won now, but they're just wasting time. So that's been his plan all along. Keep them busy while he gets the cargo loaded and they can get the heck off of Peridia. So I don't know. He still feels like the right Thrawn to me, at least Rebels Thrawn. I know I'm not a book reader. But from the character that was introduced in Rebels 3, he feels correct. And bad guys, no matter how intelligent or how great they are at tactics, in the end, they're not going to win. I mean, good guys are going to get little victories here and there. But don't worry, I think Thrawn's going to get the ultimate victory in the finale. I do think they're getting out of there, and the good guys are going to pay for it. But Thrawn, kicking butt, lose to win. I dig it, buddy. I also think this episode was loaded with solid action sequences, both in space and on the ground. You don't typically get that in a short-form Star Wars show. So, I mean, we had the great space action. The moment Ahsoka and the Purgils come out of hyperspace, they're getting blasted by the mines. She starts getting chased, has to hide in an asteroid field. And then, obviously, what was taking place on the ground with Ezra, Sabine, the Tusken samurais, Balin and Shin. Just awesome action in this episode. It just really didn't skip a beat. I'd say the slowest moment, and I still really loved it, was Hera's court-martial arraignment, or whatever you want to call that. Everything else was just kind of bing, bang, boom. Obviously, this episode was packed with some Rebels love, which we knew this series would give us, but this one really kind of paid off. We got that great conversation with Ezra and Sabine, where she catches him up on what happened over the past 13 or 15 years he's been gone. Obviously, you get all of them reunited, and by all of them, I mean Ahsoka, Sabine, Ezra, the Ezra and Ahsoka hug, the woohoo, the excitement. Zeb drops. I mean, tons of Rebels love. And then Huyang continues to kill. I mean, this guy is a slayer, especially when it comes to comedic moments. You had to love his line where he's like, oh, they're all back together again. I hope I survive long enough to see the outcome. So David Tennant, once again, stealing the show with a good little line there. And then finally, this is kind of a knock on this episode, but the Baylan mystery is starting to concern me, considering we only have one episode left, and we didn't really make any progress on his mystery outside of him essentially cutting his Padawan Shin loose and telling her, like listen, impatience for victory guarantees defeat. It's like he can sense she wants this power, and not the power he's looking for. You know, the traditional power, the mwahaha bad guys rule by force power. And he's like, listen, your destiny no longer lays with me. Get the hell out of here. He's on his own. I don't know. I don't know if they can do his story justice now, unless this character was never meant to perish and his story was meant to continue into hopefully a second season. But I did not like in this episode that we didn't really push Baylan's narrative thread that much further. It's still very mysterious, and we only have one episode to go. So how are they going to cover that and the inevitable rush to get off the planet before Thrawn leaves, so on and so forth. So the Baylan stuff, while Rey still steals every scene, and I like how, he handled those moments, I just am concerned as a fan that the whole Baylan, the search for power, is not really going to get the payoff that it deserves with all the setup that has been dedicated to it. All right, how about a few of the top moments here? I'm going to start with the Hera courtroom scene. I love that. I mean, it shows the ineptitude of the New Republic. It just shows how politics can screw anything up. It maintains the whole Senator Ziano is a douchebag mantra that we all kind of picked up from a few episodes back. And it's crazy. Like, I'm glad they're giving this guy a lot of spotlight, because his son is a fairly important character in the Star Wars universe. Kaz Ziono, he's the star of Star Wars Resistance. I know not a lot of you love it because it's set during the sequel trilogy and all this fun stuff, but it's a pretty good show. Kaz ends up being a pretty great little unique type of Star Wars lead. But getting this background, seeing how big of a dickhead his dad was, it's nice. I appreciate that. And then obviously we get the old Goldenrod appearance. That was fantastic. A great cameo. Anthony Daniels getting the credit there. Have to love that. Getting that Leia lore. She comes in and kind of undermines Ziono and smacks him around a little bit as head of the Defense Council. So just brilliant stuff. Like, Star Wars politics, to me, is right up there with all the mysticism and obviously the action. Love myself some Star Wars politics, and this scene paid off on that. Up next, I have to note the Sabine and Ahsoka Force hookup, even though it got Ahsoka got. It's a big moment. I mean, it's a big moment for these characters, a big moment for this series. It's really the first time, it even felt like for the characters, that Sabine herself was able to physically and mentally tap into the Force. So that's a huge moment. That's a huge growth moment for Sabine. I don't know if, her being with Ezra is helping her to be more in touch with the Force, or the fact that Ahsoka is back. It's Ahsoka the White, no longer Ahsoka the Sad. And maybe that has allowed their connection to blossom, grow a bit more. So I love that moment, but I also loved how Thrawn used it against them and had the Great Mothers pinpoint Ahsoka, flush her out, and force her down to the surface. So really dug that scene and really the deeper meanings behind it. And then finally, this is kind of a cop-out, but really the whole last third of this episode is considered peak Star Wars. I mean, really starting with the Ahsoka Baylan 2. It was just a great second bout between these two Force warriors here. Clearly, Ahsoka is much more clear in her mind. And, Baylan can't quite overpower her anymore. She uses her little tricks. Has Huyang drop some of those flares. It's just great stuff. Looked great. There she is. That's our girl, the white. And then obviously we get to see Ezra and Sabine in action. We get to see Ezra using his Force Fu, Sabine using her Mandalorian skills and getting much better with her lightsaber. And then of course Ahsoka shows up, and the busted night troopers show up, and Shin, and we had the moment where Ahsoka throws Shin around like a rag doll and all this fun stuff. Ezra stopping lightsabers with the Force. It was just fantastic. Using the natives against each other, the Turtle Rocks versus the Samurais, just fantastic. And then of course Thrawn the whole time scheming and really making it feel like, yeah, this is exactly how I wanted all this to go. Although the whole Balin missing out it didn't go according to his plan, but we'll see. Hopefully we get payoff on that Balin stuff. But really, the whole freaking end of this episode was just lovely Star Wars. All right, let's wrap things up with some of the Easter eggs and more than likely just references. I swear this Mon Cal, that's got to be Akbar. He's got the white foam thing on, looking good, not talking about traps, but that's definitely Akbar. I also like that Tiva gave us a Mandalore mention. Not so much that it's a reference, but it confirms that this series, Ahsoka that is taking place after Mandalorian Season 3. At least these scenes are taking place after Mandalorian Season 3, because he talks about the conflict, and then Gideon's brought up, and oh, hey, that was just a one-off thing. So, good little lore moment there, nice reference to past Star Wars, but it really just gives us the time setting we needed. Okay, you gotta mention the dude, right? Goldenrod, the professor, C-3PO himself, fantastic cameo, and I'm pretty sure they do this so they don't have to do the CG Leia. It'd be great to get Leia. I predicted it. I wanted it. I still think it counts because we are at least getting mentions of her, and C-3PO acted as her mouth. It was cool to hear out of Hollow Anakin, General Grievous, Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku in that lesson he was giving to Ahsoka. How about Ahsoka doing the old, hey, I'm going to park my ship on a space rock maneuver? First introduced by, well, I guess in our timeline, Han Solo latching on to the Star Destroyer there. But in the Star Wars timeline, Obi-Wan Kenobi doing it in Attack of the Clones to avoid Boba Fett and his daddy Jango. Hey, we finally got a Zeb drop. I know it's just a name, which confirms we're probably not going to see the big guy, and they just didn't want to spend the money on the CG. But at least we heard about Zeb, and he's training recruits as Sabine kind of debriefed Ezra on what's been going on back home. And then, this was a great one here, and I know some fans have kind of laughed at this too, but Sabine talking about the Emperor, and Ezra saying, oh, so he's dead? And she replies with, well, that's what some people say about him being dead. So it's like they're planting seeds for the sequel trilogy and that stupid somehow Palpatine return nonsense that made it in there. But it's a nice touch. Dave's doing what he can to try to tie all this together and lead us into that sequel trilogy timeline. All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, some sub up, leave some comments, share it around, turn on notifications. You know what to do. You know what to do. Don't forget, there's always time for Star Wars Time, and if you listen to the Star Wars Time show, the Force will be with you.